Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Moving Through Menopause with me, Phillipa. And today I'm really excited to have a conversation with Dr. Annie White. Dr. Annie is author of The Calm Code, and Annie's got a doctorate in traditional Chinese medicine. And I'm an acupuncture trained physiotherapist, so I love this stuff. And but what we're talking about today is really what's going on in our minds and how the mind can really mess with our moods and our reactions to situations that we encounter in everyday life. And so, welcome, Dr. Annie, to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming along today.
Thank you for having me. I love your show, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I love it too, as it happens. And I love having these conversations with people who've worked hard to, solve problems that real people are struggling with on a daily basis. And so we're talking today all about your wonderful book, The Calm Code, and staying calm when really the situations that we encounter sometimes can make that quite difficult. So we're hoping for some tips today how to tackle stressful situations with calmness and what is it, serenity, I suppose we could say.
Yeah, because if you think about it, stress is going to exist for everyone. And I don't claim to tell people, hey, I'm going to take you to nothing ever bothers me land. We are going to live there and it's going to be awesome because that doesn't exist. But if you think about stress, what is really stressful is our reactions to things that happen.
Mm.
It's if we spin out over something, or if we lose our marbles on a customer service rep, or we could, go into so many. So that's what I try to help people mitigate is reactions that they don't want to have to stress that actually make everything worse.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, isn't it? You can really find yourself going down the rabbit hole with this one. And so what's taken us down the rabbit hole is our thoughts, the thoughts that we're thinking around these stressful situations. And so you've really spent a lot of time trying to unpick what's happening in those circumstances and the kinds of things that we could maybe think in place of those thoughts. So, in order for us to unpick the science a little bit, what sort of science are we talking about, Dr. Annie?
Good question. It's based on the science of neuroplasticity. I know neural what I'm not going to be too sciencey here, but neuroplasticity states that every thought, action, and emotion wires your mind or trains your mind along those pathways.
Mm,
So if you go through a very stressful time, you are actually training your mind to be more stressed out,
mm,
right? And so that's where these reactions can come because smaller and smaller and smaller things start to set you off and you start to react in a stronger and stronger way. And it's not because it's your fault and you didn't do it on purpose, but
mm,
it is how the science of the brain works. So once I figured that out, I developed a method and ways, like you were talking about, to train our mind to be calm and happy. And then your reactions are more balanced. I mean, I will give you a couple of tips that you can use in the moment because I think that helps too, right? And then
yeah.
every time you're using them, you are training your mind to be calmer and happier.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, I know this from my own experience that you can create a feeling with only a thought, and this sort of tendency for things to become self-fulfilling and kind of accelerate us, so that like you say, you just get to that state more and more quickly each time with less and less, with meaning to less and less, really.
Right.
And this is just our survival mechanisms really at play, isn't it? That we working in the subconscious, not taking things through that thought process, just makes everything more efficient. But actually, those patterns can be so unhelpful if we and repeating them over and over again just reinforces those patterns. So breaking those patterns. And I was really enjoying in your book, actually, you've got an acronym, haven't you? The happy method. Yes.
Yes. So it's a 6-week process. And each week you get new tools to use. And I give you the exact time. We start with 3 minutes twice a day. We work up to 8 minutes twice a day. And the happy is an acronym for all of the tools. And people might not recognize all of the names of them because the first one is called Happy Sparks. The second one is Appreciably Tools. The third one is 5 breathing. And I'm going to teach you guys that today. The fourth one is Peaceful Habits. And that's, I'm not going to teach anybody how to meditate, and everyone knows that meditation is good for you. But I do get into all of the medical benefits, the health benefits, and who's doing it, just to inspire. Then the next one is called Imagine It, Be It. And it's a really fun visualization technique. And the last one is called eMagica, which is builds upon that visualization technique. But what I did was, I found scientifically proven ways that have been scientifically studied, based on real studies, and I blended them into tools that people can use every day. So, for instance, looking at pictures can make you happy, so can gratitude, so can best possible self, so can visualization, so can meditation, so can affirmations, and I go on, and I blend them all into these tools that I teach people to use every day.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is with this stuff, it doesn't necessarily come naturally, and that there is work for us to do. For those of us who find ourselves subject to, and I think there are people who are more predisposed than others to nipping down the rabbit hole. And for us around menopause, this anxiety piece comes unwelcome, uninvited, and it comes out of nowhere for some people that we've never had to deal with this before, and it's a surprise, and we don't necessarily have those tools that might help us.
Agreed. And I experienced it myself. I was becoming really anxious. I went through a really stressful couple of years. And even though I knew all of this and I had been working on all of this, it was meant for my patients, Phillipa. It was not meant for me. I would never need these tools. What? And the universe is just laughing at me like, oh my, is she serious about this business? And as I'm getting more and more anxious and irritable, and I even got, sad and a bit depressed, it culminated, honestly, with my husband walking out and saying, I don't know who you are anymore. You are not yourself. And I can't live like this. And it finally occurred to me, as I'm sobbing on the living room floor, not only did I feel like a failure because my husband had just said, I can't do this anymore, but I realized I didn't take any of my own advice. I didn't do any of the exercises that I had been developing for so long. And it took that to hit me and tell me that I needed this stuff myself. And then once I saw how powerful it was and how well it worked, it became my mission to get it to everyone who needs it. Because anxious and irritable and depressed and even highly stressed, none of that is fun to live with. It's just the pits, really.
Yeah. You are absolutely right, and you're so in it. You're not seeing it from outside either. Is the other thing, isn't it?
It is so hard at times to see the forest through the trees. It really is. I know that's such a common thing to say, but even after I look back on it, I was like, oh my gosh, I watched how these situations and how these thoughts, these stressful thoughts, and I'll get into a second, why negativity is inextricably linked to stress, right? Because it's going to wire the negative past too. All of those thoughts kept training my mind, and making me into this person that no one recognized anymore,
Mm.
and I didn't like.
No. The more we have those thoughts, the more we become those thoughts. And yet there is an opportunity to use that tendency for good, if you like, that power for good. So having awareness obviously is the first step, and whether that's somebody telling us or whether it's us having that awareness for ourselves that we're just not sounding like ourselves, and we're definitely not feeling like ourselves. But to know that what gets us to that place, we can turn it on its head and use that consciously with conscious thoughts to reverse the situation. Although it takes practice in the first instance, then that can become a much more automatic process eventually, can't it? With practice, with repetition, we know this. We can make this path a little bit more the well-trodden path, if you like.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a good point. If I were to say one downside of natural medicine or any sort of natural solution, even working out, for your body to stay in physical shape, is
Mm.
that you have to put in some effort. I did try to make it as easy as possible for people. I mean, people, if you really want to do this, you can make time for 8 minutes twice a day, or I'll take 16 minutes a day. If you really want to live a happier, calmer life, you're going to do this. Just like if I want to be in good physical condition, I'm going to make the time to work out. I can't just read a book on working out and have the effect it's just, that's not a thing. And I wish it was, but that's the only downside of natural methods. But the upside is so many different things in addition to side effects. And I'm not shaming, meds at all. There's no shame in that game, but I don't love long-term usage of them unless it's a chemical, thing in the individual's brain, which does happen. And you definitely need meds in those situations.
Yes, and we're not really going down that path
No,
of
I just like to say that because people say, "Oh, Annie, you're saying people shouldn't use meds," and I would never say that. I'd ever, ever,
no,
ever say that.
no. And what I love about this stuff is it works alongside, Western medical approaches.
Right.
We can work this program alongside whatever
Yes.
medications, and that's what I love about this stuff. And then maybe at some point you begin to feel that you could gradually wean yourself away from those kinds of things.
It's true. So what happens is you do this until I mean, I say 6 weeks in the book. 6 weeks, you're going to feel better. It's up to you where you want to be. You continue the 16 minutes or 8 minutes twice a day until you feel how you want to feel. And then I do recommend 5 minutes a day. But here's what people do. They stop doing it, which is fine because they feel so much better and they completely forget about it. And that's not a problem. But I say if a stressful event comes up again, right? Like even getting a new job, even good things, kids getting
Yeah.
married, kids going to school, whatever it is, someone passing away too,
Mm.
all the things, you hop back on 8 minutes twice a day, you know? And if that makes sense, then this is a tool that you can have to use for forever, to kind of keep your mind in that good trained physical shape.
Yes, yeah, because habits are hard to break, and we do have that path of least resistance that we tend to favor. And it is interesting that you make these parallels with physical training, because obviously that's the thing that I do. And so, I teach Pilates, and Pilates, so many people tell me, oh, Pilates really helps my back.
Yes.
And then, they do it and they do it. And then for some reason, life gets in the way and they fall off the wagon. And for so long, they're fine without it.
Exactly.
But then,
And they're not motivated because they don't have the pain.
yeah, well, that's it. That's it. And so without the pain, and then they're kind of okay. And they're thinking, oh, this is wonderful. And, we're all fixed. And then the next thing, gradually, perhaps over time, or maybe they do something like gardening too much, or, whatever it is. And I have so many people who will come back and say, I just have to do this stuff. I just have to do it every week. And you know what? For me, my experience is 1 hour a week really can keep the doctor at bay, the problem at bay. Now, that's Pilates we're talking about.
But
And,
it's good
and it,
for people to know about, and that's a
yeah.
natural method, and it's a
Mm,
natural strengthening method, and I
mm,
love Pilates because it's so balancing.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, I love it, obviously, but but the thing with this is, the parallels are so great.
Yes.
We're training neural pathways to remember stuff, but by the same token, they're just generally inherently lazy. Take the path of least resistance, and so for me, working at this stuff is a privilege, really,
Well, and that's the thing too, Philippa, because I think Pilates is fun. And the methods in my book are fun too, because every time you use them, you feel good because it triggers all of those positive pathways, those positive, you know, neural circuits in your brain.
yeah,
And
well,
it's
I,
good for you. So
and
it
it's
feels
good
good,
for
just like
you. Well,
Pilates.
I know. I loved actually your under H, the happy for H for happy, um, getting the photographs out, and you were talking about sort of going through a selection of photographs and and discarding any that didn't really fulfill the purpose. And I thought, because I had an opportunity only a few weeks ago to go through some old family photographs, and there were some that kind of brought back some memories of, sadness or whatever. But the ones that you look at that make you happy, oh my gosh, if you could do that for hours on end once you got going, couldn't you?
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fun. And yes, I think that's a very important point, especially in the beginning, because those stress pathways are in any of the negativity, and we'll talk about that in a second. Any of the negativity pathways, they're so strong, just like you said, the path of least resistance, your brain does the same thing. So
Mm,
if your brain is dominated by stress and negativity, it's going to go there quicker
mm,
than you can say Bob's your uncle. It doesn't stay on those
mm.
happy ones. So in the beginning, I just tell people really only choose pictures that ignite those positive sparks. That's
Yeah.
why I call them happy sparks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was it. Happy Sparks. Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely going to do that. Definitely. Now, you said we're coming to negativity.
Ah,
This
so
this is something that can be so hard for people to even kind of notice in themselves sometimes.
yeah, and so I like to describe it as, I don't know if you ever saw the character from Saturday Night Live, Debbie Downer. I call
Oh,
it I
um,
call it Debbie Downer syndrome.
right. Okay.
Because I got to this point. I had Debbie Downer syndrome, and what happens with Debbie is people will bring up anything, like somebody will invite her to dinner, right?
Mm, mm.
And she'll just think of the worst thing and say, "Oh, well, that's fine, but don't serve fish because my doctor said my mercury levels are sky high." And then there's the wah wah sound behind her. And I'm telling you, I thought the wah wah sound was going to start following me around. But it's because every time we get stressed out, our survival instinct, and you touched on this earlier, our survival instinct triggers us to consider worst case scenarios. It's how we get out of dicey situations. It's great when a
Mm,
bear is chasing us, right? But if it's for everyday situations, we don't need those worst case scenarios because they just trigger negativity. Worst case scenarios are always negative, aren't they? So
yeah.
every time you're stressed, you're also building those negative paths at the same time.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? This tendency for us to sort of risk averse. We're so risk averse that we're always on that sort of the radar is kind of always looking for that kind of stuff so
It
that we
gets
can.
trained. It
Yeah.
gets trained to do that. And
Mm,
it's really good. I mean, to keep an eye on if somebody's talking to you and the first thing that comes to you is something negative, you
mm,
might want to do some retraining on that because it doesn't get better on its own.
mm,
Well, my experience is it doesn't get better on its own, but a lot of people don't know that they have a choice in the matter.
mm.
We're not taught this in school. We're not taught how to do this, and we should be. because I wish I would have learned this when I was 18-year-old. My goodness, my life would have been so much better.
Yes, yeah, no, I completely agree. What sort of techniques can you talk through in this moment that could help us to? Is it changing the dialogue? I mean, how are we dealing with this?
Changing the dialogue's really hard because in changing the dialogue, your brain is really smart.
Mm,
So if you're going to change the dialogue and say, no, but it's actually this, your brain's like, no, it's not. And I'm not dumb. And no, it's not. And then you'll get into this whole thing of, no, it's not. No, it's not. Don't go. I mean, people say to go there. I don't use that. Let me just say, I don't use that approach. What I say is get off that topic. Okay. And
oh,
I want you to find something in the moment that you can feel appreciation for, that
ah,
you can feel grateful about. And I want you to superpower this by adding the triple thanks statement. And you say, thank you for pants, comfy pants. Thank you for chocolate. It can be so simple. You
right.
know, when I started, my mind was at a pretty low point, a very low point. I even did things like, and you know, you might laugh at me, but I did thank you. I can tinkle inside. Thank you for toilet paper. And it wasn't all about the potty, but I would do really simple things.
Yeah,
Thank you for my comfy socks. Thank you for TV or whatever, computers that I can talk to people.
yeah, yeah,
Get
yeah.
any information I need. But what that does in the moment is it shuts down those stress and negative pathways. It stops them from working. And then it ignites those happy and positive pathways so that you change your energy in that moment, but you are also training your mind every time you do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, the thing that I often am dealing with is this sort of the aftermath of the meltdown, or whatever it is, and that's the guilt that we feel.
Mhm.
Um, I think I'm particularly good at guilt. So, how do we deal with this, or is it just that we shouldn't do those things that make us guilty? What is it,
I
Doctor?
have two answers.
Okay, good.
Okay. The first answer is when your mind is so trained to be stressed and anxious and irritable, those things pop out of your mouth and you can't control them. Okay.
Mm,
You just can't. And I've been there and I know how that is. So, in those moments when you're feeling guilty, I would say to you, ask yourself what you would say to your best friend in that situation. Because you probably wouldn't tell your best friend she's a B word or that she should really,
mm,
you would probably
yeah,
say, listen, these things happen and it's going to get better. And the second thing I would do is if things are out of control, because that is an out of control point, and I've been there, that is not a judgment at all. You need to do some training so that in those moments you have that split second
mm,
so that you can make a decision, right? So that it isn't all of like a stress response. It isn't that irritable response. It isn't that anxious response. You have
mm,
a beat to make that decision and say, okay, I'm not, I'm not gonna say that. But
yeah,
when your mind is in a certain spot, you don't have that choice. It just whoop, goes.
yeah. And I mean, anxiety is a difficult one, isn't it? When we are anticipating, uh, this feeling all the time, where you're sort of anticipating feeling worried, and then feeling worried, and then feeling bad that you felt worried, and worrying about worrying, really, for some of the time. So it becomes very cyclical in nature, and
It
it's
does.
it's breaking out of that cycle, if you like, isn't it? How?
But my stance on that is the best way to do that is to, and I know I keep saying the same thing, but it really works, is to train your mind to be more calm, to be more balanced, and that's why I say to do these exercises at specific times of the day. That's why I don't tell people, you know what, Philippa, do this exercise in those moments. That is extremely difficult in the
uh,
beginning.
yeah, yeah.
Down the line, sure. But in the beginning, you're just going to go back. But if you set aside that time, it's just like working out or doing
Mm,
Pilates. You're
yeah.
setting that time to build the parts of the mind that you want to dominate. Just like I
Yes.
would be with my Pilates, I would be building the body that I want, the balanced body that I want to live with, you know?
Yeah, you know what? This is making such sense to me now because I was thinking when you were saying that about the rehabilitation work that I prescribe to people, and I don't say do the exercises when you're in pain. I say do those exercises regularly every day, twice a day, if you can. And this is what we're talking about, isn't it? Training, and not in the moment necessarily, but the training that we do at those times when we're feeling calm, even perhaps, is going to then stand us in good stead when those situations arise in our lives where we're having in danger of melting down
Yeah.
or worrying or whatever it might be.
And
So
you have more power in those
yeah,
situations, just like with your rehab, you are strengthening that part of the body. So I don't have pain anymore,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. This is working so well. So, and this is the thing that we care about actually is that struggling with chronic stress really has far reaching ramifications on our physical bodies as well as our emotions and our intellectual being. So, talk to me a little bit about this, would you,
Can,
please?
can I tell you a little bit of a frightening statistic?
Oh,
And
well,
I know
yeah,
it's the American Psychological Association, so it might be a little bit different in the UK, but we've all just been through a pandemic. But
true.
they recently said that 77%, and it's of Americans, and worldwide we don't have those numbers, but 77% of people have stress levels so high they're damaging their physical health.
Wow.
Yeah, and you just don't even know about it. And I like that you're bringing this up because there is something you can do in those moments to stop this stress response.
Mm,
Because when you feel your breath change, when your breaths become shorter, quicker, closer together,
mm,
shallow, you're in the stress response. You're going
yeah,
into that fight or flight, right?
mm, yeah.
Okay. In those moments, here is a trick. It's three-step breathing method. I go in longer in the book, but it's easier here to give 3 steps because you're going to remember it. Okay.
Sure.
And then I'm going to teach you a little bit of a cheeky way to remember it. So, step one,
Yeah.
I want you to put your left hand on your chest and you're going to breathe in and out and say, I am safe. I am not in a life or death situation right now. See, the
I'm
mind can't
safe.
fight against that because
Yeah,
you're really not. I am
no,
safe. I am not in a life or death situation right now because that's what the stress response was for. And I want you to repeat that to yourself throughout this entire method. Okay. Move that hand down to your lower belly. And as you breathe in, I want you to feel that hand extend toward the opposite wall. If you're laying down on the bed, I want it to extend toward the ceiling. Okay. I am safe. I am not in a life or death situation right now. Step three, you're going to take your right index finger and you are going to cover your right nostril. Doing this, you're going to breathe in and out only through your left nostril. Studies have shown breathing in and out only through your left nostril activates your calm or parasympathetic nervous system and it
mm,
calms you down faster. And I say pick your nose the right way for stress because, it looks a little bit like you're picking your nose and you do it on the right side. But it'll help
oh,
you remember it.
yeah, that's great. The right way, right. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, your mom probably always told you not to pick your nose, and she might be mad at me, but this really works, and it'll help you remember it. Someone said to me, "Well, Annie, what if I'm in my car and people think I'm picking my nose?" I said, "Who cares? What are they going to chase you to the next gas station stop and say, 'Hey, were you picking your?' Who cares?" And if you're in front of people ever, I mean, people might not do this in front of other people, but if you are, you can share this with them and say,
Mm.
"Hey, did you know that if you breathe in and out only through your left nostril, you activate your calm nervous system?" It's pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool, and that's something we've been doing in yoga, isn't it, for
Mhm.
centuries? So it's great that science is catching up with this stuff. that really, really does work. It's just fascinating, counteracting those thoughts. I'm not in a life or death situation. I'm live on the internet. What could be dangerous about that?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, in our minds, we can make any situation dangerous, can't we?
Yes, yeah,
But if it's not a life or death situation, that's a different conversation. I am safe. I'm
yeah.
not in a life or death situation because I'll tell you right now, if a bear's chasing me, I'm not covering my nostril and doing the whole thing, right?
Oh,
Like
you're running.
that's 100% true. And then I will very much love that fight or flight response because it's helping me out.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
in every other situation, this can really, really calm you down.
Yeah. Well, I'm some fantastic tips. Thank you so much for these fabulous actionable tips, something that we can go away and practice right now, here, today, in this moment. That's just so wonderful. Thank you for that. And do please tell us where can we find your book? I can see it there on your
It,
bookshelf. It looks
it's right there.
fabulous. Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, thank you. It's on Amazon. It is on Audible, iBooks. It's at Barnes and Noble, IndieBound. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, tell them to get it for you. And you can find me at DOCTOR Annie ANNIE White.com. I'm working on programs and stuff like that. But if the website does explain more of the science, and I do have guided meditations on there. I've got a bunch of stuff that can help people. So
Oh, well, we know we're just in this together, aren't we? For the good of humankind. It sounds like we're making it up, but really it's absolutely, definitely the truth. Helping people is in my DNA. It's something I'll be doing till the day I die, hopefully. And I think,
for
we're
better or worse, for
yeah.
better. I always say that, it's like I feel like some people and maybe most people on this earth have that gene. It's like this, it just makes us happy
Yes.
to help
Yeah,
other people. It
it
just
does.
does.
It
Mm.
does. Well, we're going to be happy reading your book. I've already learned some great tips that I will be using for myself, and I'll be absolutely listening to that book over and over on Audible, because I think this is the other thing with a book like this. It's not something you read once and forget about, is it? It's a manual. It's something we can come back to over and over
Yes.
again.
And there's so many tools. It's like you don't have to. I take through 6 weeks and then I teach you how to use them all together and you make it your own. And then
Mm.
it's just, exactly right. It's
Yeah.
something you can just have in your back pocket and like, oh gosh, this came up and I'm feeling like, a little down, or I'm feeling a little anxious or too stressed, or I've just bitten the head off 5 people in a row.
Yeah.
I need,
Yeah. Yeah, this is the nature of the beast. Life is not linear, it's absolutely a journey, and we need some guides along the way to keep us on track. So this is going to be definitely something that I'll be using. So, well, thank you so much for coming along and having a chat with me today on the podcast.
Thank you for your podcast and thank you for helping so many people all the time.
Oh, thank you, Annie. It's so great to meet you.
You
Uh,
too.
I'll, I'll say goodbye for now. Take care. Bye for now.